The Memphis Grizzlies had a horrific end to their season last year. Dillon Brooks and Ja Morant were always in the media for the wrong reasons. And even though they had a Defensive Player of the Year on the roster, it wasn't enough to stop Anthony Davis and LeBron James from completely torching them, scoring at will in most games. The Grizzlies were an outstanding team, but their youth showed both on and off the court. Their stars are still young, so this could be an extremely beneficial lesson and could help them in the long run. But what is clear again is the Western Conference is loaded. The Denver Nuggets won their first championship while getting a lot of help from key multiple scorers. Jamal Murray, Nikola Jokic, Michael Porter Jr., and Aaron Gordon were all unstoppable consistently. Then when you look at a team like the Los Angeles Lakers, you have two players who could score 30 points whenever they feel like it against any team in LeBron and Davis. Rui Hachimura and Austin Reeves were also huge contributors to the scoreboard. And then you look at what's happening down in Phoenix. You have three amazingly gifted scorers in Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, and Bradley Beal, all on the same court. And the point is, if you don't stack your defense before this upcoming season starts, you're going to be falling behind really quickly. Teams are simply becoming too talented offensively. If your defense isn't great, you're not going to be winning a championship anytime soon. Just look at the Nuggets. And I know everyone's going to credit Jokic for winning the title, and rightfully so. He's the best player in the world. But I don't think people realize that if it weren't for Aaron Gordon, Christian Brown, Bruce Brown, and Kentavious Caldwell-Pope's defense, they would not have made it to the finals. They had to guard Anthony Edwards, Karl Anthony Towns, Kevin Durant, Devin Booker, Anthony Davis, and LeBron James throughout the postseason, not to mention when they made it to the finals. And while Memphis did have a great defense in the regular season, for all of the reasons just mentioned, they need more help on that end, especially with Dillon Brooks being gone. So, as you know, Marcus Smart was traded to Memphis in this three-team trade, and while Celtics fans throw tantrums, Grizzly fans were crying with tears of joy. They now have both Defensive Players of the Year from the last two seasons, which is almost unheard of. But how exactly could Marcus Smart turn things around for the Grizzlies, especially with Morant's suspension? To answer that question, we're going to need to break down Smart's game on both sides of the ball, starting with the offense. Smart was an excellent point guard this season, even though NBA legend Bob Cousy disagreed. "I liked Smart," he said. "I didn't like some of the things he did. He thought he was a point guard when he's not. His mind was more to create opportunities for himself. In my judgment, point guards have to come across mid-court thinking, how am I going to set up one of the other guys? That was never his thing. I would always have him in the game because he does so much more. He does intangible things. With guys who played with his intensity, you can't measure the effect on the other four people, so I would have been reluctant to let him go." Cousy is a legend, don't get me wrong, but Smart was without a doubt a pass-first guard. He averaged 6.3 assists per game, and I'm not saying he's an amazing facilitator or passer, but he's a good one. He is taking a step forward in that department, and the most important thing to note is his use of referring to two All-Stars. Both Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum got tons of open looks off of open cuts off of Smart's facilitating. His IQ is high. He knows when and where to pass and put you in the best position to score. He's going to help out Jaren Jackson Jr. a lot. But when it comes to shooting, Smart struggled, only shooting 33%. But he's a streaky shooter who always seems to hit timely shots. From his time in Boston, he also developed the skill to drive and kick. Not only that, but his decision-making after penetrating inside is something the Grizzlies haven't had. Yes, I know Tyus Jones and even Ja Morant are good decision-makers too, but the difference is Smart has done it at the highest level against great teams in big moments. He's battle-tested. He's had to make big, meaningful decisions in crunch time numerous times. That experience alone should make the Grizzlies' offense run more smoothly and efficiently. What young, inexperienced teams seem to do when they're down on the scoreboard is just jack up threes to cut into the lead. And we saw that in the Lakers vs. Grizzlies series. Whenever the Lakers would get up big in the series, Memphis would just come down the court and shoot threes. And failed. You had Jaren Jackson Jr. shooting all types of wild shots from deep. A veteran presence like Marcus would control the tempo and get everyone in position. Now defensively, Smart is among one of the best. Whether you think he deserved Defensive Player of the Year doesn't matter. His impact on that end is insane. Casual fans will say all he does is flop. But people who understand the game know it's much more than that. The best aspect of his defense is versatility. He's one of, if not the only guard to be able to defend all five positions, including centers. Drew Holiday can guard bigger players too, let's give him credit, but not like Smart can. His tough, rugged build and strength allow him to be able to hold his own inside the paint. And this is where he does most of the flopping. And while, even though I can agree, it does get kind of annoying at certain points, especially when it's criminally exaggerated, it still does count as a defensive stop and forced turnover if the call goes in his favor. Most players are afraid to consistently take charges all game long because they don't want to be viewed a certain way. But Smart doesn't care what the fans say, and that's exactly why he's one of the best. He does what most don't. Bringing that toughness to Memphis's defense will impact everyone. He's the best defensive leader in the NBA outside of Draymond Green. His tenacity and the ability to coach other players is why his defensive energy is contagious. If you play terrible defense or lack effort, he will hold you accountable. So it's going to be interesting to see how, or maybe how not, he will influence a player like Morant's defense, which is just below average. But what's clear is that Smart alone isn't going to get Memphis to a championship. For things to really turn around, other players are going to have to step up big time, such as Ja Morant. Ja's going to be serving a 25-game suspension, which is nothing in all honesty. In this area where players load manage like crazy, most stars miss around that many games anyways. But all jokes aside, Morant will have to lock in on and off the court. This team isn't going anywhere without him. He's averaged 26, 6, and 8 in the regular season, which are absolutely superstar numbers. And don't forget, he dropped a ridiculous 45 points in Game 2 versus the Lakers after injuring his hand. The drama surrounding this team was at an all-time high, and yet he still managed to score nearly 50 against arguably the best defense in the NBA. While his production would dip every other game, we can all agree that the environment within the Grizzlies organization was awful. I'm not making excuses for him because he's the one who started it all, but after letting go of Dillon Brooks, things should be slightly better. Now, Morant has to make sure he stays on the straight and narrow. He was a top 3-point guard this season. He was dominant in the paint, and his efficiency was in the same category as giants like Giannis, Zion, and LeBron James. He's an unreal athlete who could carry a team deep, especially when your backcourt partner, Desmond Bane, averaged over 20 points. He was always a deadly shooter, but he can now create for himself. That's why the Grizzlies just gave him a 5-year, $207 million contract extension. He's the perfect teammate alongside Morant as long as his defense keeps progressing in the right direction. With the addition of Smart, they will now have 3 ball handlers in the lineup. Most likely it'll be Ja at the point, Bane at the shooting guard position, and Marcus Smart playing small forward. But we all know the NBA is positionless anyway, so that doesn't really matter. Now suppose the Grizzlies want to maximize their potential. In that case, Jaren Jackson Jr. has to perform at an all-star level. He took a big step forward this season offensively, especially in the post. But this season, it would be hugely beneficial if he were a little bit more aggressive when it mattered most. He has the touch of finesse to be a difficult matchup in the post, and he needs to be utilizing it more often. The 2 pieces they really missed in the playoffs were Steven Adams and Brandon Clark. And this might be a hot take, but if those 2 had played, they would have beaten the Lakers. And if you think otherwise, you're drastically underestimating the impact of Steven Adams. Adams is the best offensive rebounder in the NBA. The Grizzlies were 4th in offensive rebounds per game, and remember, Memphis shot terribly versus the Lakers. So just imagine if Adams had been there, given them multiple opportunities and second chance points. He also would have helped defensively. Adams was one of the best paint protectors in the league this season. He was top 20 in contested 2-pointers per game, and having a big bruiser in the paint would have most likely affected Anthony Davis's aggressiveness. But all of that's in the past now, so let's leave that series alone. My point is, when healthy, they have an excellent team on both ends, not to mention Xavier Tillman and David Roddy, who are outstanding role players. I just hope that Ja Morant can see how great of a team this is. They still need to add a few more players to fill out their bench, but on paper, this is without a doubt a top 3 team in the West. Derrick Rose also recently signed with Memphis, but I'm still kind of figuring out how many minutes he's going to get. But I definitely would put Rose on the court. They need as much scoring as possible, and he still has 10 to 13 points per game left in the tank. But what do you think? Does Marcus Smart make the Grizzlies a championship team? Or do you see another first-round exit in their future? Let us know in the comments down below. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.